Hi everybody, my name is Ernest Ike IV. I'm the founder of Shandoka and the inventor of a very simple system that makes it predictable and safe to convert existing motorcycles from gasoline to electric. So this adapter fits over 30% of the motorcycles that are on the road today. And we're using a bolt-on solution to convert the motorcycle. Basically, we remove the engine and the transmission and bolt on this adapter in place. Now, it can fit every motorcycle with a little bit of modification to the frame, but the primary fit is for these ones where it's easy to just bolt on and off. There's a lot of people that are doing their own conversions now, and as you might imagine, that sometimes turns into a very scary and dangerous mess. If you can imagine 400 volts of direct current terminals right there next to your thigh, and people think that's a good idea, I didn't think that was such a great idea. So this solution allows us to remove the engine and transmission, and then we replace it with a structural adapter. I came up with this idea in 2010 after frustration of trying to convert my own, trying to adjust my carburetors on my own motorcycle. And I'd already been in the clean fuel space and hydrogen since early 1999. So I've got about 20 years in this space so far. I filed the provisional patent rights in 2017. And right now we've got utility patents filed in the United States, Europe, India, China, and Brazil. And we're about 18 to 20 months from our first office action on that. In addition, I now have an amazing, phenomenal founding team that's working with me. We bring a lot of international experiences. I myself, but Priya was born in India, did her master's work in China. She currently teaches in Hindi and Chinese and has a startup that's very successful of an app that teaches people how to learn those languages. I've known Daniel for about 20 years. He's brought over 400 products to market in the US, India, China. I worked for him 20 years ago when he and his wife had the first company to sell makeup online, and they did phenomenal work with that. Gregorio's our designer. How good does it get to be a motorcycle company with an Italian designer? Mike Del Petro is phenomenal with spreadsheets and built the business models based on our discussions. I've known John since our days together at Extend Health, which is now Towers Wallace Whitson something or other. That's the biggest healthcare exchange on the planet. Nebris is here in Charlotte, but she's also a phenomenal person in the Army National Guard, a competitive bodybuilder, and just a phenomenal person all around. And 3 weeks ago, she gained her U.S. citizenship. So we're really excited about that. And a new team member that joined 2 days ago is our German engineer who did his intern work at BMW and still has phenomenal connections there. So we bring all these experiences together to create a heritage brand for this new millennium. When you look at the United States market, there's about $9 to $11 billion in motorcycle sales. But 80% of those are used. Most of the market is actually used motorcycles. We feel very comfortable that by 2030, we can be doing about 100,000 retrofits annually, which is a little bit more than half the scale of Harley-Davidson. So let's take a little bit of ride together though, because we're not just talking about motorcycles in the United States. This is a motorcycle that you would typically buy in Pakistan. It's a 70cc motorcycle. So when you think about a small Harley is 1,200 cc's, an average motorcycle in Pakistan is only 70 cc's. And this 2013 model looks a lot like this 1981 model, and even more like this 1970 model, and the brand new 2021. So they've literally sold the same motorcycle for 50 years. They've got 34 million of them, and this is our solution to have a bolt-on adapter for Pakistan also. So when you look at this global market, the US has about 2 million motorcycles, but when you look around the world, just Pakistan, India, and Vietnam are over 100 million motorcycles waiting to be converted. And when you really think about it, we're not going to approach our carbon goals planet-wise if we're trying to sell everybody else a brand new vehicle. We have to approach this from a standpoint of adapting what we already have. And that's also how we model fit for these other countries where the working wage is so much lower than ours, is by creating a way that they can get into clean vehicles without having to spend a lot of money. But we also empower local motorcycle shops like Tutopia Cycles that's down here on South Boulevard. I've been working with them for a couple of years also on like the vision and what they think as a motorcycle shop needs to be included. And what we do is create a B2B solution into the business. We empower them to keep their teams busy during slower months, and then have the motorcycles ready to go in the spring. We've got an inherently safe battery that we just completed an agreement with last month, and this empowers us to have a separation of the purchase of the motorcycle from the battery. So the battery is intended to have like a 3-year renewable lease, so you can also have a higher rate and get new every 2. The battery is where all the advances are going to happen in electric vehicles, and by enabling that, we make it a lot easier for people to get into a clean vehicle. Our motorcycles are already on the road. We don't have to pass government approvals in any country, and we're not importing or exporting vehicles, just parts for vehicles. So we've got a number of regulatory benefits there. We create value for folks. I know there's a lot of questions that you'll come up with, but this was the other key that I completed 2 months ago. We're going to be the 4th or 5th company on the planet to get an intelligent, autonomous welding robot. This brings our labor time from about 40 hours per adapter down to about 4. So it really cuts our costs and gives us a significant amount of flexibility in our future designs. And I know a lot of people have been looking forward to this one. I'm not going to show you what's in the center of that, but this is our concept for moving forward into new motorcycles based off of what we're able to create. I give a probability range on our future profits, because anybody that thinks that they know exactly what their business is going to do doesn't need somebody else's money to do it. All right? We've got a probability of where we should fit. This is a scale for Europe and the US are about the same size. Brazil and South America combined are about the same size. So these are kind of the scales we're looking at our growth pattern. We can talk about our competitors and our raise plan. Thank you.
Awesome. Are you an engineer?
Very close to an engineer.
Okay,
Yes.
you talk, think, and act like one, so
Yeah.
right, you're probably closer than you think. So just general pitch feedback. I know your team is awesome. I would not spend a ton of time delineating. Maybe, 2 or 3 key bullet points. That way you can say we have the experience to take this forward, and then just move on, because we didn't really get to see, other than kind of this outside, the ins and outs of the device. You talked about driving down costs, how all of the things that I want to know about the device itself. You didn't really have a chance to get into. So some of the other stuff, I think, green tech, clean tech, whatever we're calling it these days, is a really hot field. So I don't think you have to do a ton of time selling people on why this should, why we should be thinking about conversion. I think that's 1 or 2 quick points, and saying here's a solution, yada, 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 and moving on. And then on the functional stuff, like if I converted my motorcycle, where do I charge it? Does it plug into the wall? Do I have to buy another charging station? Like, there are some customer specific questions that I have. And then the other less techie question is, from an aesthetic standpoint, is someone who's into motorcycles. I am partnered with someone who is, and he really likes the look of his motorcycle. So how do you get them to decide to bolt something on that may take away from the sexy aesthetic of a motorcycle? Would also be a question. And then last, I'm throwing it all in there because Steve talks a lot. Have you talked to the city of Charlotte?
Me?
Yes.
Yes. The only reason I ask that is because they do have a green tech, clean energy goal, and I know they have those horrendous dirt bikes, sorry, CMPD, that could very well act as a proof of concept in a city that gives you some real traction going forward. Okay.
Awesome.
That was everything, I think.
Cool. So a couple of great things in there. So obviously with an electric vehicle, you can charge it anywhere there is electricity. And one of the aspects that's challenging in the electric car market is that most of the weight you're moving around is not the person, it's the car. With a motorcycle, most of the weight we're moving around is the battery itself, right? So we've got a much smaller battery. It could charge in about 3 to 4 hours out of just the side of the wall, in about 10 to 15 minutes at a public charger. So there's a very fast charge cycle that comes with it. And that's part of the excitement with the battery connections that we just made. As far as looks go, this is designed to either fit inside of the existing fairings of a motorcycle or also have a skin that goes around the outside. So you're kind of looking at the structural elements of it, and then it gets an aerodynamic skin. So like you've kind of mentioned, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder for many motorcycle riders. And like you said, a lot of the reason that people buy a motorcycle is to be seen on the motorcycle, right? And the ability to take the amount of power that's on board and create a light show or a sound storm or other types of things that people are looking at to personalize their motorcycle is something that does separate us apart from existing electric motorcycle brands, along with our lifetime upgradability. And yes, you're right, I did spend a little more time on my team this time than I usually do, but I felt like they needed a little bit of props this time around. So thank you for the comments and suggestions. I appreciate that.
It's interesting. I've done actually recently diligence on a couple of e-bike and companies, and so I've got some familiarity with the space. I think that from a total addressable market standpoint, I'm not sure if as an investor I want to hear as much about the motorcycle market. And I know that sounds odd, but what I think would be interesting would be the aftermarket EV conversion comparison, because all the shops that are dropping, platform EV technology into old cars and whatever are blowing up. Like, they got backlogs for years. They're making gazillions of dollars. To me, that's really the market model. It's all B2B. It's through people like, EVs West and EV Raleigh and the guys up in New England that are doing, Land Cruisers and, Defenders and whatever. I think that's actually the right market comparison, because ultimately for you to be successful, this will never be a direct business. Obviously you've got your own motorcycle coming out. It's a separate thing. It's probably important to understand how real a part of the vision and the capital raise that is for you, because product development is massively expensive, as you know, because you've built a beautiful product here. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the business model itself, I think I would look at it through that lens and be more attracted to it if I was looking at numbers that were like, there's this many shops in the US that fit bikes. We've talked to their customers. They want to retrofit. They all want to get to electric, but they love the classic bike aesthetic, like whatever the pitch is, right? Because a lot of the e-bike companies are coming out with motorcycles. You got Huck Cycles and Cornelius there. You've got it won't be long before the Super 73s, although they're pretty commodity, have some sort of something that's approaching, motorcycle. They're already at kind of the, whatever they call e-moped or e-moped kind of class. And so you're going to have pressure from both sides. You're going to have the motorcycle guys coming down into the space. And it wouldn't surprise me with the manufacturing expertise of somebody like Harley if they're not thinking at or looking at the Tesla model and ultimately building a platform technology that could be leased or licensed to other motorcycle companies to be able to integrate EVs, because electric motorcycles are definitely going to be here. Doesn't mean you don't have a place in the market, but I think you're going to have pressure from both sides, from the e-bike guys coming upstream into faster little e-bikes, and then the motorcycle guys coming down. So really, in this pitch, carving out exactly what your market is and understanding what the go-to-market is through the channel, I think is kind of the more interesting way to think about the marketplace and the total addressable market. I think it's very interesting. One of the questions that I had was whether or not you guys have gone through the regulatory process to qualify for EV credits, because a lot of the e-bike guys are getting close on that. I know a couple that I did diligence on that have successfully done that, and it creates really interesting economics between federal and state EV credits if retrofitted bikes qualify. So,
yeah. I'm sure there's a little bit of gray area from the regulatory standpoint as to whether they want to give credits for an adapted vehicle, of course. Sort of to the comments of that squeeze that happens from the bottom of the market and the top of the market, companies like Huck that are doing a great job with non-regulated space vehicles, right? Basically, all those companies are creating and marketing a vehicle that they say legally stops at 28 miles an hour, even though they offer a very easy way to break the law and do whatever you want to with it. Eventually, the DOT is going to crack down on that. Police departments are already not putting up with it anymore. So we're in that regulated space of vehicles without having to create a new one. So that gives us some advantage there. Harley-Davidson already tried and failed miserably. They just cannot bring an electric bike to market under their own brand. So they had the Harley Livewire for about 2 years, and just a few months ago they spun it into their own brand, and it's already got problems. So Harley didn't even have a battery when they sold their motorcycle. They got a battery because they bought Alta. And you know, right,
Got
but
a lot
each
of people put money into that space.
right. Their challenge is that they have to reach that top of the market. Right. For example, Curtis Motorcycles has a beautiful electric motorcycle. It's $126,000. You're not solving any global problems with that, and your market is so tight. Whereas we fit such a wide range of market. I can deliver a commuter-ready electric motorcycle for $7,500 with a $125 monthly payment on the battery, and you get a new battery every 3 years. I can beat anybody else on the product fit for the market.
Yeah, I love the leasing aspect of it from a business model. Anytime you're looking at something that's going to create subscription or recurring revenue, obviously you're driving tremendous kind of value into the multiple on capitalization. But I would, you know the space, man. But these guys are huge companies and they have tons of cash. We're just here to talk about the pitch. So I would just say, really, really clearly how you fit, how you're different, and why you here with a handful of really smart people can take on those big brands, because they and it may be that it's a business that's built and a tech that's to be acquired. I would spend a little bit more time on how you've protected the IP as well too, because it sounds like you have a great IP asset. So it's really kind of just refining the market. I think you just want to be careful when you're talking to an investor to dismiss those giant brands, because they're big companies that have tons of resources. But I think what you're doing here is fantastic. I love the space, and it does have to happen. You probably could go harder on the sustainable side of things too, and it's a super important marketplace. So it's good stuff.
Great, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you both for the feedback today. Thanks, everybody.